Mr. President,
Majority Floor Leader.
before we proceed with the order of business, Mr. President, several guests would have to be acknowledged. Guests of Senator Jingoy Estrada, DFA officials who would be subject of confirmation proceedings of the Commission appointments tomorrow, November 27. Deputy Head of Mission and Consul General Manuel Revilla Fernandez, Assistant Secretary Maria Agnes Cervantes, Ambassador Giovanni Palek, Deputy Assistant Secretary Maria Elena Cristina Delfin Maningat, Executive Director Marlo Aguilar Miranda, Assistant Secretary Angelito Nayan, Executive Director Arman Talbo. Guests of Senator Alan Peter Cayetano, the Vice Mayor Resty Sibog of Candaba, Pampanga. Guests of the Senate External Office, Barangay Poblacion 12, Taal, Batangas, headed by Punong Barangay Anselma Casanova. Guests of this representation, the Samahang Barangay Treasurers of Orion, Bataan, Mayor Cagas of Digo City with 13 barangay captains, barangay chairman, the mayor of the guests of this representation, as well as Senator Mart Villar from Paite, Laguna, Mayor Ronald Cosico of Paite, Laguna, as well as Councilor Marcelino Baisas of Paite, Laguna, and the barangay captains of Paite, Laguna. Likewise, Mr. President, guests of Senator Jingoy Estrada and this representation, and Senator, our minority leader, Alexander Corovin, Isabella Games, Nikki Cheng, and Justin Games. Alexander Corovin is a Russian national which is subject of a bill which successfully passed its second reading on November 25, 2024, seeking Philippine naturalization. Corovin is a distinguished and multi-awarded figure skater. He recently earned silver medals at the 2022-2024 Trophée Metropole in France alongside his skating partner, Ms. Isabella Games, who happens to be a grandniece of former Senator Freddie Webb. Over the past 3 years, he has consistently secured top positions in numerous competitions under the flag of the Philippines. We welcome them to the Senate, Mr. President.
To the aforementioned guests, welcome to your Senate, and apologies for the wait given that we just had a caucus. Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. President, I move that we defer the approval of the journals of the session of the 29th session, November 5, 6, 7, and 11, 12, 13, 14, 18, and 19, 20, 19, and the 30th session, November 25, Mr. President. I so move.
Any objection? Hearing none, same is approved.
Mr. President,
Majority Leader.
I move that we proceed with the reference of business.
Secretary is directed to comply.
Bills on first reading, Senate number 2881, an act increasing the bed capacity of the Philippine General Hospital in the city of Manila from 1,334 to 2,200 beds and appropriating funds therefore. Senator Cayetano P.
The Committee on Health, Demography, and Finance.
2882, an act prohibiting unfair debt collection practices, providing penalties therefore and for other purposes. Senator Padilla.
The Committee on Banks, Financial Institutions, and Currencies.
Resolution, proposed Senate Resolution 1239, directing the appropriate Senate committee to conduct an inquiry to determine the effect on the government's tax collection of the tax leakages caused by the proliferation and scrupulous use of fake person with disability identification cards in order to avail of the 20% PWD discount and value-added tax exemption, by Senator Gatchalian.
The Committees on Social Justice, Welfare and Rural Development, and Ways and Means.
Additional reference of business, messages from the House. Letter from the House informing the Senate that on 19 November 2024, it passed the following House bills in which it requests the concurrence of the Senate. House number 10985, expanding employment opportunities for senior citizens and providing additional incentives to private entities, further amending Republic Act number 7432 as amended, entitled An Act to Maximize Contribution of Senior Citizens to Nation Building, Grant Benefits, and Special Privileges, and for other purposes.
To the Committees on Social Justice, Welfare and Rural Development, Labor Employment, and Human Resources Development, and Ways and Means.
10959, an act providing for the protection of the remittances of overseas Filipino workers.
To the Committees on Banks, Financial Institutions, and Currencies, Migrant Workers, and Ways and Means.
10958, declaring June 19 of every year as a special working holiday in honor of the birth anniversary of the national hero, Dr. Jose Rizal.
To the Committees on Basic Education and Culture and the Arts.
10955, declaring December 19 of every year as a special working holiday in commemoration of the anniversary of the Grand Lodge.
To the Committee on Culture and the Arts.
10924, providing for free freight services in the transportation of relief goods to calamity-stricken areas.
The Committees on Public Services and Ways and Means.
10914, providing for free financial education to overseas Filipino workers and their families.
The Committee on Migrant Workers.
10535, amending sections 134 and 168 of RA 8424, otherwise known as the National Internal Revenue Code of 1997, as amended.
The Committee on Ways and Means.
Letter from the House informing the Senate that on 24 September 2024, it concurred with the Senate amendments to the following House bills. House number 8483, establishing in the municipality of Rodriguez, province of Rizal, a level 2 hospital to be known as the Northern Tagalog Regional Hospital, appropriating funds therefore. And House number 10440, establishing a national high school in Barangay Poblacion East, Santa Ignacia, Tarlac, to be known as the Santa Ignacia National High School, appropriating funds therefore.
To the Archives.
Letter from the House informing the Senate that on 25 September 2024, it concurred with the Senate amendments to the following House bills. House number 694, declaring June 20 of every year a special non-working holiday in Ginayangan, Quezon, in commemoration of its founding anniversary. 3963, declaring November 23 of every year a special non-working holiday in the province of Benguet, to be known as Benguet Day, in commemoration of its foundation day. 3966, declaring November 7 of every year a special non-working holiday in Cuenca, Batangas, to be known as Cuenca Foundation Day, in commemoration of its founding anniversary. 3970, declaring November 3 of every year a special non-working holiday in Calibo, Aklan, to be known as the Calibo Foundation Day. 5830, declaring January 22 of every year special non-working holiday in Giginto, Bulacan, in celebration of the Halaman Festival. And House number 5843, declaring January 8 of every year special non-working holiday in Pavia, province of Iloilo, to be known as Pavia Day, to commemorate its foundation anniversary.
To the Archives.
Letters from the House informing the Senate that on 24 September 2024, it adopted the following Senate bills. Senate number 2415 as an amendment to House number 7292, creating a VAT refund mechanism for non-resident tourists. Senate number 2451, amendment as an amendment to House number 7354, establishing evacuation centers in every city and municipality, appropriating funds therefore. And Senate number 1864 as an amendment to House number 9978, providing for a moratorium student loan payments during calamities, disasters, crisis situations, and other emergencies.
To the Archives.
Letter from the House informing the Senate that on 25 September 2024, it ratified the Conference Committee report on the disagreeing provisions of House number 10381, an act further amending Republic Act number 8178 as amended, otherwise known as the Agricultural Tarification Act, and Senate number 2779, amending RA 8178 or the Agricultural Tarification Act as amended by Republic Act number 11203.
To the Archives.
Letter from the House informing the Senate that on 13 November 2024, it adopted Senate number 2793 as an amendment to House number 8456, an act promoting the development of the Philippine downstream natural gas industry, consolidating for the purpose all laws related to the transmission, distribution, and supply of natural gas and appropriating funds therefore.
To the Archives. Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. President, I move that we resume consideration of House Bill number 10800 under Committee Report number 335. This is the bill on the General Appropriations Act of 2025. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, consideration of the aforementioned bill is now in order. Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. President, having closed the period of interpellations, I move to open the period of committee amendments and recognize the sponsor, Senator Grace Poe.
Any objection? Hearing none. Motion is approved. Senator Grace Poe is recognized. You may proceed, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good afternoon, everyone. 3 linggo na ang nakalipas nang magsimula ang inyong Senado sa masusing deliberasyon ng panukalang pambansang budget na nagkakahalaga ng 6.352 trillion pesos. Back then, I said that this budget wasn't just a series of numbers on our spreadsheet, but a blueprint of our priorities and the heartbeat of our nation's future. Ngayon, habang tinatapos na natin ang prosesong ito, buong kumpiyansa kong masasabi na tinupad natin ang ating pangako. Bawat desisyon ay binusisi, bawat pondo ay siniguradong may tamang layunin. I would be remiss if I do not highlight the unwavering determination of this chamber to ensure the timely passage of this budget despite time constraints. Our esteemed colleagues deserve recognition for working tirelessly, burning the midnight oil on many occasions to meticulously examine every aspect of our fiscal proposals. I would also like to take this moment to applaud our colleagues from the minority for being positively constructive. Naging katuwang kayo sa pagbuo ng isang makatao, makabayan at makabuluhang budget. With that said, let's take a closer look at how your Senate has maximized the budget to secure our nation's sustainability and prosperity not only in 2025 but in the years ahead. Pinakamahalaga sa ating budget ang paglaan ng pondo para sa serbisyong pangkalusugan, edukasyon at mga programa pangkabuhayan para sa mga Pilipino. Through the efforts of Vice Chair Pia Cayetano, we made sure that the Cancer Control Program and Cancer Assistance Program are capable of providing early detection, diagnosis, treatment, medicine, and care-related services, not just for the 8 common types of cancer, but for all emerging types as well. To improve our capacity to track the spread of infectious diseases, the UP Philippine Genome Center will now directly receive funding for genomic biosurveillance so that it may conduct research on disease outbreaks and monitor mutations. Upang makasiguro ang tuloy-tuloy at mas abot kayang pang-ospital at gamot ng ating mga kababayan, ating tinaasan ang pondo para sa medical assistance to indigent and financially incapacitated patients. To ensure that no patient will ever be turned away due to lack of hospital beds or incomplete facilities, we included additional allocation for health facilities enhancement program. Kabilang na dito ang paglalaan ng dagdag pondo para sa mga mobile laboratories, hospital equipment, at mga ambulansya. The 2025 budget embodies our collective belief that education is the cornerstone of national development. Binigyan nating prioridad ang free higher education program across various state universities and colleges at mga subsidy para sa mga learners at tertiary level students mula sa low-income households. This is to fulfill education's role as the great equalizer for all to ensure that our scholars ng bayan are those who are truly in need. Sinigurado rin na bibigyan ng benepisyo sa ating kaguruan ay wasto at nararapat. Following the proposals of Senator Win Gatchalian and Vice Chair Pia Cayetano, we tightened the provision on compensation for teaching overload to make sure that those who rendered more than required number of teaching hours are given the appropriate compensation. Through the tireless efforts again of Senator Win, we allocated funding for the long-standing Gurong Panghinungod or Teachers to the Barrio program with the Bayanihan spirit alive, especially in our education sector. Para sa paggawa ng mga bagong classrooms at school buildings, ginawa nating standard ang engineering and administrative overhead expenses to 0.5% of the total amount. This ensures that every peso allocated for the construction of school facilities actually go to the building of more classrooms. Hindi sapat na classrooms lang ang babadgetan. Smart classrooms make for smarter students. Kaya naman pinondohan rin natin ang smart TVs para makapag-agapay sa kaguruan ng mga mag-aaral. We also ensured the allocation for the alternative learning system and for learning resources of our learners and disabilities. These are part of our continuing efforts to make education more accessible and to ensure that no child gets left behind. In line with this committee's steadfast commitment to promote the holistic welfare of our learners, we provided scholarship grants for those who want to pursue guidance counseling master's degree. This complements our earlier efforts under the committee report to elevate the status of our guidance counselors. We all know the best intervention comes at the earliest stage. Part of our fight against stunting and malnutrition is ensuring the availability of fresh produce as well as instilling in our students the importance of eating healthy. Kaya naman ipagpapatuloy na rin natin ang gulayan para sa paaralan para panatilian ang budget ng school-based feeding program for undernourished learners. To address malnutrition at its root, we ensure the funding for the first 1,000 days of DOH and Tutok Kainan of the National Nutrition Council. Likewise, we maintained our support for DSW's supplementary feeding program, Bangon program in BARM, and the first 1,000 days under the 4Ps. The Senate version of the 2025 budget is indeed a recalibration of priorities. In this chamber, we made sure that the assistance goes straight to the beneficiaries. Sa inisyatibo ni Vice Chair Amy Marcos, pinalawig natin ang assistance to individuals in crisis situations or AICs upang matulungan hindi lamang ang mga naging biktima ng sakuna, emergency o pang-aabuso, kundi pa rin ang mga hirap sa buhay dahil sa kakarampot na kita mula sa trabaho. The Senate also prioritized the increase of the social pension for indigent senior citizens. Sa tulong nito, may pagpapatuloy ng DSWD ang dumobleng 1,000 monthly stipend ng mga validated and waitlisted senior citizens beneficiaries mula sa dating 500 pesos lamang. Sa pangunguna naman ni Vice Chair Risa Hontiveros, ay maiibsan ang bigat ng babayaran ng beneficiaries ng pambansang pabahay para sa Pilipino program or 4PH ng DHSUD. Ito ay dahil sa pinalawak ng subsidiyang ibibigay para sa programa. Prioridad din ng Senado ang paglikha ng mas maraming trabaho. Sa ilalim ng inisyatiba ni Vice Chair Loren, isinama natin sa budget ang makabuluhang pagtaas sa sahod ng ating tupad coordinators. Alam po natin na sila ang nasa front lines ng ating mga programa sa emergency employment. Thanks to Vice Chair Joel Villanueva's leadership, we were also able to increase the budget for the scholarship fund from fiscal year 2025 to 2028 to support a one-year National Certification 3 program in early childhood education or ECE. This initiative underscores our commitment to investing in the professional development of our educators in order to ensure that they are equipped with the skills and knowledge to nurture the next generation. Mula sa committee report, binantayan at pinanatili natin ang budget para sa teaching materials ng mga guro at pinalawig ang pondo para sa mga libro at learning materials ng ating mga estudyante. Layunin din nating palakasin ang sektor ng agrikultura na haligi ng ating ekonomiya at kabuhayan ng maraming Pilipino. Sa pamumuno ni Vice Chair Cynthia Villar, tiyak na matutugunan natin ang ilang mahalagang aspeto ng sektor na ito para sa mas masaganang, ani at matibay na hinaharap. Unang-una, naglaan tayo ng karagdagang budget para sa Competitive Enhancement Measure Fund upang mapondohan ang pagbuo ng accreditation ng mga plant at livestock nurseries, pambili at distribution ng site-specific ng mga uri ng pananim at pagtatayo ng mga post-harvest facilities na magpapababa ng nasayang na ani ng ating mga magsasaka. Para naman sa mga hog raisers na apektuhan ng African swine fever, maglalaan tayo ng karagdagang budget mula sa Agro-Industry Modernization and Financing Program Fund upang matulungan silang makabangon muli. Kasabay nito, ang Agricultural Credit Policy Council ay maglulunsad ng nationwide information caravans para sa mas malawak na kaalaman tungkol sa mga agricultural credit facilities ng DA. Magkakaroon din ng targeted financial literacy programs para sa mga magsasaka at mangingisda upang masigurong maipamahagi ang tamang impormasyon at mas matulungan ang ating mga kababayan sa kanayunan. We also retained the budget that we allotted for our furry friends. Ang pondo para sa Animal Welfare Program na pinaglaban ni Senator Cynthia Villar ay makakapaglunsad ng spaying at neutering ng mga hayop upang maiwasan ang paglobo ng kanilang populasyon sa kalye. It will also allow to set up shelters for animals in need. Dinagdagan natin ang pondo ng pag-asa upang mas mapalakas ang kakayahan nito na pagbibigay ng babala ukol sa mga paparating na kalamidad. While we address the foundations of education, health, and livelihood, it was equally important to ensure that our people can move safely, efficiently, and affordably. Transportation is not just about roads and vehicles. It is the lifeline that connects our communities and bridges opportunities between urban centers and rural areas. This is why, through the concerted efforts of Vice Chair J.V. Ejercito, Mindanaoan Senator Zubiri, and the Senate, ensured that there is funding for the airports of emerging tourist hubs like Siargao, Mati, Pagadian, Osamis, Bukidnon, and Kawayan. Upang masigurong hindi na muling mangyari ang airspace shutdown noong 2023, we heeded the recommendation of Vice Chair Ejercito to fund the new CNS ATM system as well as the procurement of a second power substation for the Air Traffic Management Center. Access to government services has been a challenge to our country's archipelagic nature. Remote localities like Dinagat Island don't even have access to their own LTO. Kailangan pa nilang bumiyahe ng higit na 3 oras sa bangka upang makarating sa pinakamalapit na LTO sa Siargao City. With the passage of RA 11745 in 2022, we were able to push for the establishment of the LTO San Jose Dinagat Island. Today, we push for the funding for this office so they can finally operate after waiting for 2 long years. Hindi na natin ginalaw ang pondong nakalaan para sa maayos na implementasyon, monitoring at evaluation ng mga road safety policies at programs upang mabawasan ang 12,000 Filipinos na namatay kada taon dulot sa mga aksidente sa kalye. Nais din natin magpasalamat sa ating mga kasamahan dito sa Senado sa pagtulong sa atin na ayusin hindi lamang ang pagtakda ng budget sa bawat ahensya at programang aktibidad at proyekto ng bansa, ngunit pati ang pag-aayos ng special provision sa ating budget. Isa dito ang pagdadagdag ni Vice Chair Lauren Legarda ng mga karagdagang proyekto sa ilalim ng Financial Assistance to Local Government Units o FALGU. Particularly, the inclusion of projects that support women-led social enterprises and the construction of the installation of electric vehicle charging stations pursuant to the Electric Vehicle Industry Development Act. Thanks also to the diligence of Senator Gatchalian, the committee has funded items complementary to Congress' recent tax measures, such as the creation of the Real Property Valuation Services under the Bureau of Local Government Finance in line with the RPVARA's mandate. The 2025 budget also stubbornly upholds the pillars of national security and justice, based upon our belief that these are foundations of a peaceful and orderly society where every Filipino can thrive without fear. Vice Chair Bato de la Rosa and J.V. Ejercito underscored the importance of adequate funding for national security. Through their intervention, we augmented the budget for the revised AFP Modernization Fund, which is necessary especially amid our ongoing maritime disputes, in order to enhance the Philippines' defense capabilities. Upang tugunan ang mga lehitimong concerns ng ating mga kasamahan sa Senado, lalo na sina Vice Chairs Risa Hontiveros, Senators Coco Pimentel, and Nancy Binay, siniguro nating madagdagan ng pondo ang NDRRMF at Quick Response Fund. Hindi lamang ito limitado sa DSWD, kundi pati na rin sa DND AFP General Headquarters na may mahalagang papel sa disaster response. Kasama sa kanilang mga tungkulin ang agarang pagbibigay ng tulong sa mga komunidad na apektado ng sakuna at trahedya. In support of the administration's order to ban all POGO operations in the Philippines, we augmented the budget for the Presidential Anti-Organized Crime Commission so that they can hire additional personnel and effectively implement the crackdown on POGO activities, especially those operating underground. We thank Vice Chair Joel for this important initiative. Meanwhile, through the leadership of Vice Chair Francis Tolentino, we increased the funding of the PNP for the construction of 54 police stations in various LGUs. Sa tulong din ni Sentol ay bibigyan ng pondo ang National Commission on Muslim Filipinos upang matugunan matulungan ang mga regional offices na maisagawa ang mga resilience building crisis management at sustainable development programs sa kani-kaniyang rehiyon. Following the recommendation of our Minority Leader, Senator Pimentel, during the plenary debates, we provided the Land Registration Authority additional funding for the training and retooling of registrars of deeds nationwide to fast-track the release of titles for the Pambansang Pabahay para sa Pilipino Program, 4PH, Comprehensive Agrarian Reform Program, and various transactions. Dahil sa pangangailangan magbibigay ng legal na tulong sa mga marginalized, disadvantaged na komunidad at sektor, pinondohan natin ang Developmental and Social Lawyering Program ng Korte Suprema sa suporta ng mga public interest law organizations at clinics na maghahatid ng legal aid sa mga underserved na sektor ng lipunan. In our continuous efforts to further strengthen regional cooperation with our neighboring ASEAN countries, we allotted funding to cover preparations and initial activities for the ASEAN Summit to be hosted by the Philippines in 2026. Finally, thanks to Vice Chair Legarda, the Department of Tourism will prioritize on promoting key areas such as ecotourism, protected areas, heritage and agritourism sites, and artisan traditions. Support for MSMEs within tourism sectors will also be strengthened thanks to Vice Chair Villanueva. These efforts give greater opportunities for small-scale entrepreneurs, reinforcing local economies and creating more jobs for fellow Filipinos. Ang bawat pisong iniukol natin sa budget na ito ay hindi lamang numero sa papel. Ito ay buhay, pangarap, kinabukasan ng bawat Pilipino. Sa bawat sektor na ating sinuportahan, mula agrikultura hanggang edukasyon, mula kalusugan hanggang seguridad, ay kalakip ang ating pangako sa taong bayan na walang maiiwan at walang mapapabayaan sa abot ng ating makakaya. This budget stands as a testament to our shared vision of a nation that prioritizes its people, a government that listens, and a Senate that delivers. Again, I extend my heartfelt gratitude to the Senate leadership, our colleagues and our vice chairpersons for their dedication and commitment to finish this as scheduled. We would also like to thank the LBRMO, its directors, and the dedicated Senate staff and the OSGP staff whose unparalleled diligence over these past 4 months has ensured the completion of this budget. This achievement is a true testament to your hard work. Maraming salamat po. Thank you.
Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. President, with no other committee amendment, I move to close a period of committee amendment. So move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none. Motion is approved. Majority Floor Leader.
With no other individual amendment, I move to close the period of individual amendments.
Any objection? Hearing none. Motion is approved. Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. President, Senator Marcos would like to insert her manifestation of support for DPWH.
So inserted and duly noted into the records. Majority Leader.
Mr. President, the Deputy Minority Leader is seeking the floor. Okay na? Or later? Boto na. Pwede after na? I would do that motion, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move to approve on second reading House Bill number 10800. So move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none. House Bill number 10800 is approved on second reading. The Minority Leader is recognized. What is your pleasure,
Can
sir?
we make it of record that I abstained on the second reading?
Duly noted and entered into the records. Thank you, sir. Majority Leader.
Mr. President, this bill being a certified measure, I would like to request the Secretary to read the letter of certification from President Ferdinand Marcos Jr.
Secretary will please comply.
Malacanang Palace, Manila, October 29, 2024. Senator Francis Cheese G. Escudero, Senate President, Senate of the Philippines, Pasay City. Mr. Senate President, pursuant to the provisions of Article 6, Section 26, Paragraph 2 of the 1987 Constitution, I hereby certify to the necessity of the immediate enactment of House Bill number 10800, an act appropriating funds for the operation of the government of the Republic of the Philippines from January 1 to December 31, 2025. To ensure the uninterrupted operation of critical government functions, guarantee the allocation of fiscal resources for vital initiatives, and enable the government to adeptly respond to emerging challenges. Best regards, very truly yours, signed, the President of the Philippines.
Majority Floor Leader.
With that, I move to consider on third reading House Bill number 10800. So move, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, consideration of House Bill number 10. The Minority Floor Leader is recognized for his manifestation.
Yes, I noticed that we are now proceeding to third reading on the same day that we just approved this bill on second reading. So, and the reason for this is because of the presence of another presidential certification, which I find so unfortunate, Mr. President, because it forces me to make this manifestation just to be
Continuing.
consistent.
Continuing.
To be consistent with my stand in the other the bills which were certified, which I believe are not compliant with the constitutional requirement that there must be an emergency right before our face, Mr. President. That's why we need the presidential certification. So I just want to make this manifestation. So it's no longer an objection, Mr. President.
Thank
It's a
you,
manifestation.
distinguished
And then after
Minority
the
Floor
vote,
Leader.
can my vote be recorded as abstention, and then I will make an explanation? Thank
It
you.
will so be recorded at the proper time. Majority Floor Leader, can you restate your motion, please?
Mr. President, I reiterate my earlier motion to consider on third reading House Bill number 10800. So move, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, consideration of House Bill number 10800 on third reading is now in order, and Secretary General is directed to read the title only of the bill and to proceed to roll call vote.
Matitan tayo ng bill.
Here. Sorry.
An act appropriating the funds for the operation of the government of the Republic of the Philippines from January 1 to December 31, 2025. Roll call vote. The Honorable Senator Binay, Senator Cayetano Alan, Senator Cayetano Pia, Senator De La Rosa, Senator Ejercito, Senator Estrada, Senator Gatchalian, Senator Go, Senator Ontiveros, Senator Lapid, Senator Legarda, Senator Marcos, Senator Padilla, Senator Pimentel, Senator Poe, Senator Revilla, Senator Tolentino, Senator Tulfo, Senator Villanueva, Senator Villar Cynthia, Senator Villar Mark, Senator Zubiri, the Senate President. Oh, yes, no. Yes, no, but no.
With 17 affirmative votes, 0 negative, 1 abstention, House Bill number 10800 is approved on third and final reading. Congratulations to our Finance Committee Chair, the Vice Chairpersons, and members of the Committee on Finance. Chair would like to instruct the LBRMO to kindly furnish a copy of the matrix of the amendments to the respective offices and members of the media. Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. President, the Deputy Minority Leader is seeking the floor. I move that she be recognized.
Senator Ontiveros is recognized for her manifestation.
But,
Majority Floor Leader.
but before that, our Chair, Senator Grace Po, would just like to make manifestation of thanks to
The motion is withdrawn to recognize Senator Ontiveros, and the distinguished chairperson of the Committee on Finance is once again recognized. You may proceed, ma'am.
I just want to sincerely thank our colleagues for their contributions and also the leadership, particularly Senator Escudero, for his guidance. And I would also like to thank our LBRMO and our office staff. Hindi po biro ang pinagdaanan dito at ilang gabi rin po silang napuyat kasama rin ng mga kasamahan natin dito sa Senado. So moving forward, we will ensure also that the advocacies of the Senate what we believe will truly help our countrymen are carried over. So thank you very much, Mr. President.
Noted and entered into the records. Majority Floor Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Again, I reiterate. Senator Nancy Binay, seeking the floor.
Senator Nancy Binay is recognized. You may proceed, ma'am.
Mr. President, I would have voted yes, but I was in a meeting, Mr. President. Thank you.
Duly noted, ma'am, and entered into the records. Thank you very much. Majority Floor Leader.
Again, Mr. President, the Deputy Minority Leader is seeking the floor. Sige na. Go na, ladies.
Totoo na yan. Totoo na yan. The
Iyo po.
Deputy Minority Floor Leader is recognized. You may proceed, ma'am.
Salamat, Abi, Mr. President. Mr. President, I wish to register my yes vote to the committee report on House Bill 10800 or the 2025 General Appropriations Bill. The Senate minority had its initial reservations about the 2025 NEP, and during the budget debates, I voiced my concerns about the transfer of key priority programs to unprogrammed appropriations and the raiding of PhilHealth funds. To recall, these transfers came as a surprise to many since the provisions were not in the Senate version of the 2024 budget and were only introduced during the BICAM. Gayunman, masaya ako na nagpahayag ng pakikiisa sa ilan sa ating kasamahan sa Senado tungo sa aking matagal ng panawagan para sa mas bukas, inklusibo at transparent na budget BICAM process para maiwasan din ang gulatan at kontrobersiya. Karamihan din sa atin ang paulit-ulit na nagpahiwatig na ang pondo sa ilalim ng PhilHealth ay hindi dapat malipat kung saan-saan. Pinahayag ko rin, Mr. President, ang pangamba ko ukol sa mabilis na paglobo ng pambansang utang kumpara sa kakaunting buwis na pumapasok sa National Treasury. In the coming years, we will have to do more with less. Kailangan natin unahin ang mga tamang proyekto, lalo na ang pangmatagalang proyekto na maghahanda sa atin sa maaaring pinsala na dulot ng climate change at iba pang kalamidad. The 2025 national budget is an instrument of social good and serves as a lifeline for many of our kababayan. Nagpapasalamat ako sa ating chair ng Senate Committee on Finance, Senator Grace Poe, sa pagtanggap ng ating amyenda na magpapalaki at magpapalakas sa mahalagang social protection programs ng DSWD, DOLE, DOH, DA at iba pang ahensya ng pamahalaan. Matapos ang 2 taon nating pagsulong dito sa Senado, may 37 million pesos tayong pondo sa ilalim ng Department of Health para sa pagtayo ng Women and Children Protection Units sa DOH retained hospitals bilang pagtugon sa tumataas na kaso ng karahasan laban sa kababaihan at kabataan. Para palakasin ang laban sa human trafficking gaya ng POGO at ibang scams na nambibiktima sa loob at labas ng bansa, 84.9 million pesos ang idadagdag natin sa pondo ng Interagency Council Against Trafficking o IACAT. 32.7 million pesos naman ang inilagay natin sa National Coordination Center Against Online Sexual Abuse and Exploitation of Children and Child Abuse and Exploitation Materials o NCC o SAEC-CSAM para palakasin ang laban sa lumalalang pang-aabuso sa kabataan sa digital space. At sa tulong ni Subcommittee Chair Senator Pia Cayetano, matagumpay din natin na i-realign ang kailangang pondo para sa tuition fees at iba pang bayarin ng mga estudyante sa state colleges and universities. Ayon na rin sa polisiya ng free higher education. Para sa pagbangon ng mga biktima ng Marawi siege, muli nating dinagdagan ang pondo ng Marawi Compensation Board sa unprogrammed appropriations para sa patuloy na implementasyon ng Marawi Siege Victims Compensation Act. We also thank Chair Poe for the retention of the special provision on the release of trust receipts for Human Rights Violations Victims Memorial Commission, which would give life to its programs aimed at shedding light on historical injustices. Malaking panalo naman para sa kabuhayan ng ating mga magsasaka at mangingisda ang nakuha nating commitment mula sa mga government agencies na sila ay bibili ng agricultural at fisheries products mula sa local producers. Ayon na rin sa Sagip-Sakal Law, na isama din natin ang special provision na minamandato ang DSUD, DOTR at NEDA na bigyang puwang ang pabahay para sa Pilipino na nakatira malapit sa transit stations patungo sa mga syudad. And of course, we successfully pushed for the special provision that will allow the housing interest subsidy to be used as additional credit enhancement to further improve the affordability of 4PH housing packages to families belonging to the bottom 30% decile. Ilalapit niyan ang maayos na pabahay sa libo-libong pamilya na nakatira sa mga ilog at bahaing lugar at yung mga nagtitiis sa mga completed but unlivable na housing projects dahil sa kawalan ng tubig. For these reasons and so much more, Mr. President, we support the passage of the 2025 General Appropriations Bill. Maraming salamat po.
Noted and entered into the records. Before recognizing the majority floor leader, Chair would like to correct the vote earlier announced. The Secretariat counts 18 affirmative votes, 0 negative, 1 abstention in order to reflect the vote of Senator Legarda who was seated at the VIP Gallery 1. That was not counted earlier. Thank you, ma'am. We corrected the records, ma'am. Majority floor leader.
Mr. President, next to make a manifestation is Senator Joel Villanueva. I move that he be recognized.
Senator Villanueva is recognized for his manifestation. You may proceed, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Thank you, Majority Floor Leader. We'd like to put into the records our sincerest thanks and congratulations to the hardworking chairperson of the Senate Committee on Finance, Senator Grace Poe, for her able leadership, stewardship of the fiscal year 2025 national government budget. It was a challenging endeavor, but true to her name, Senator Grace has shown grace under pressure in the handling of the budget, patiently listening and peacefully resolving, Mr. President. I cannot emphasize more all the interventions that this representation introduced, from the committee report up to the final committee report of the Senate version of our General Appropriations Bill, Mr. President. Mr. President, just to put into the records, especially the newest interventions that we proposed, we had about additional 200 million for the Training for Work Scholarship Program, for our assessors in TESDA, strengthening the certification system, the assessment and certification for senior high school, Mr. President, the programs for DA, for NCCA, for our athletes under the Philippine Sports Commission, etc. Mr. President, this representation dreams of a flood-free country. Kung kaya po ganun na lamang yung ating pagbusisi ng budget ng mga programa ng pamahalaan sa proyekto ng flood control ng ating gobyerno. Sinisiguro po natin na maayos at epektibo ang mga flood control projects na itinatayo ng ating gobyerno. The DPWH has given us their commitment to timely implementation of the flood control and mitigation projects of the government. Kabilang po dito yung catch-up plan po nila na hiningi natin, especially, Mr. President, yung big ticket items that will significantly make a dent to this perennial issue. That is why we support this budget. We'd like again to thank our fellow colleagues in the Senate for their insightful interpellations, the staff for bearing with us through the long nights and early mornings, the Secretariat and the Senate Legislative Budget Research and Monitoring Office for their invaluable assistance. Mr. President, last but not the least, truly the power of the purse is a huge responsibility. The national budget is not just a ledger of numbers. It enables our national and economic development and brings to life our dreams, our visions, and the aspirations for our country, especially for our fellow men. So again, congratulations to the leadership of the Senate, Senate President Chis Escudero, SPPT Jinggoy Estrada, and of course, our chairperson, Senator Grace po. Mabuhay po tayong lahat at mabuhay ang Pilipinas. Maraming salamat po.
Mr. President, Mr. President, last to make a manifestation is our Minority Leader, Aquilino Coco Pimentel. I move that he be recognized.
The minority leader is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, my dear colleagues, I abstained from voting on the 2025 General Appropriations Act or Bill for the second and third readings, respectively, because learning from last year's experience, I have adopted a wait and see attitude, which I believe is the more prudent approach, Mr. President. Of course, this is in addition to my continuing objection to a very unnecessary presidential certification for a bill which we process every year and on a specified period of the year, Mr. President. However, I join the President in his expectation that all agencies should ensure that every centavo allocated will be judiciously spent on urgent priorities and socially impactful programs. It is therefore imperative to monitor the developments during the bicameral conference meetings, particularly on the following matters, which I believe this representation believes to be very significant, such as the following. Number one, DSWD's Ayuda sa Kapos ang Kita Program, AKAP. Bantayan po natin yan. Number two, the SHUD's housing programs for the homeless poor. Number three, the DOTR's on-hold projects. Number four, DPWH's flood management programs. Number five, the ICT's infrastructure flagship projects. Number six, unprogrammed appropriations, especially the level. Number seven, the DOH Cancer Assistance Fund. And then let us add also PhilHealth, the PhilHealth subsidy as well as the corporate operating budget of PhilHealth. Number eight, some police and military expenditures need to be monitored carefully. Number nine, the allocation for contingency and national disaster risk reduction and management funds, because we in the Senate we lessened the contingency fund level and increased the NDRRMF level. And of course, there are other significant concerns like the budget deficit and our borrowing levels. Ang pakiusap ko po sa mga ahensya ay simple lamang. Exercise discipline and eliminate wasteful spending. Let us not forget that our projected budget deficit for 2025 stands at 1.53 trillion pesos, while the national government's total outstanding debt is expected to reach 17.35 trillion pesos next year, and with gross borrowings for 2025 projected at 2.5 trillion pesos. So adopting this cautious wait-and-see approach allows us to ensure that the proposed national budget for fiscal year 2025, which is themed Agenda for Prosperity, fulfilling the needs and aspirations of the Filipino people, will truly and adequately address the genuine and authentic needs of the Filipino people. Maraming salamat.
Thank you, Minority Leader. Majority Leader.
Mr. President, I move that we transfer from the calendar for ordinary business to calendar for special orders committee report number 368 on Senate Bill number 2880. This is the bill on the People's Freedom of Information Act. So move, Mr. President.
Is there an objection? There being none, motion is approved.
I move that we consider Senate Bill number 2880 under committee report number 368.
Is there an objection? There being none, motion is approved. Consideration of Senate Bill number 2880 is now in order. The Secretary is directed to read the title of the bill without prejudice, inserting into the record the whole text thereof.
An act implementing the people's right to information and the constitutional policies of full public disclosure and honesty in the public service and for other purposes.
Majority Leader.
To sponsor the measure, I move to recognize Senator Robin Hood Padilla, Chairperson of the Committee on Public Information and Mass Media, to deliver his sponsorship speech.
Senator Robin Hood Padilla is recognized.
Maraming salamat po, Ginoong Pangulo, at sa atin pong pinunong mayoriya. Eksakto po, mahal na Pangulo, dahil ang pinag-uusapan po natin ay ang katatapos po nating pagbalangkas ng budget ng 2025 na isinagawa po ni Senadora Grace po. Ito pong akin pong patutunayang sa akin pong talumpati ay patungkol din po sa iminungkahi at iginawa ni Senador Grace po. Isang karangalan po para sa inyong lingkod ang tumayo sa bulwagang ito bilang tagapangulo ng Committee on Public Information and Mass Media at sponsor ng Committee Report number 368 na konsiderasyon ng mga bersyon ng mga People's Freedom of Information Act na inihain po ng ating mga iginagalang nakasamahan. Nandiyan po si Senadora Grace po, ang Senate Bill number 100, at kay Senador Joel Villanueva, ang Senate Bill number 933. Ginoong Pangulo, ako po'y bumabati kay Senador Joel Villanueva sapagkat kahapon lang po siya po ay binigyan ng pagkilala sa walang kapaguran na pagsusulong ng Freedom of Information Act. At siyempre po kay Senador Bong Revilla sa kanya pong Senate Bill number 1101 at kay Senadora Loren Ligarda, Senate Bill number 2321. Ginoong Pangulo, mahaba-haba na po ang pinagdaanan ng panukala ng Freedom of Information sa Pilipinas. 30 taon na po sa aking estima. Habang binabasa ko nga po ito, naiisip ko po na maari na talaga itong magkaroon ng sariling kabanata sa libro ng kasaysayan. Patid ko po na naihatid na po ito sa plenaryo ng dating tagapangulo ng komite, Senadora Grace po. Not once, but twice. Noong ika-16 na kongreso pa nga po, ay pumasa na ito sa ikatlong pagbasa sa mismong bulwagang ating tinutungtungan. Subalit, sa kasamaang palad po, ay nabinbin po ito sa Kamara. Marami rin po ang nagsusulong ng Freedom of Information sa ating mga kasamahan dito sa Senado, kahit noong sila po ay naglilingkod pa sa malaking kapulungan o sa Kamara. Noong 2016, sa pag-upo po ng dating Pangulong Rodrigo Roa Duterte, kagyat niyang ipinalabas ang Executive Order number 2 na mas kilala bilang Freedom of Information Program. Ang EO na ito ang unang nagpasimula ng programa sa Freedom of Information sa bansa na sumasaklaw sa mga tanggapan ng gobyerno sa ilalim ng executive branch. Makailang ulit rin pong ipinagdiinan ni PRRD ang kahalagahan ng pagtataguyod ng karapatan ng taong bayan na malaman ang mga gawain ng gobyerno, lalo't higit sa paggasta ng buwis ng mga mamamayan. Ginoong Pangulo, malinaw pa po sa sinag ng araw ang isinasaad ng ating konstitusyon sa ilalim ng Artikulo 3, Section 7. The right of the people to information on matters of public concern shall be recognized. Lalo pa po itong binigyan ng diin sa ilalim ng Seksyon 28, Artikulo 2 ng sa ating saligang batas na sumasambit na subject to reasonable conditions prescribed by law, the state adopts and implements a policy of full public disclosure of all its transactions involving public interest. Sa isang demokratikong pamayan, wala pong boss kundi ang taong bayan. At bilang tagapaglingkod ng bayan, tungkulin po nating tumugon sa mga tanong ng ating mga pinaglilingkuran. Sa panukalang batas po na ito, ang bawat Pilipino na humihingi ng impormasyon ay may karapatang mabigyan ng akses sa mga tanggapan ng pamahalaan. Ito ay magiging applicable po sa lahat ng executive, legislative, at judicial na tanggapan, constitutional offices, lokal na pamahalaan, state universities and colleges, government-owned or controlled corporations, at iba pang instrumentalidad ng pamahalaan. Ginoong Pangulo, may mga magsasabi po dyan na paano naman ang sensitibong impormasyon na hindi for public consumption. Hindi po sila dapat mangamba. Sapagkat sa Section 7 ng atin pong panukalang batas, ang listahan ng mga exemptions. Kabilang po dito ang mga impormasyong may kinalaman sa ating pambansang seguridad at depensa, diplomatic safety, mga impormasyong nakatala sa executive session ng 2 kapulungan ng Kongreso, trade secrets, gayon din po ang mga sumasailalim sa bisa ng presidential privilege. Tumatalima din po ang panukalang batas na ito sa sinasaad ng ating saligang batas sa Seksyon 17, Artikulo 11, na ang isang pinuno o ang kawaning pambayan ay dapat magsumite ng pinanumpaang deklarasyon ng kanyang mga ari-arian, pananagutan at nitong kabuuan ng ari-arian o statement of assets, liabilities, and net worth, SALN. Makakasama po ba sa ilalathala ang mga personal na impormasyon sa SALN tulad ng address, mga detalye ng mga dependents, pirma ng kawani ng pamahalaan, at mga kopya ng ating IDs? Ang sagot po, Ginoong Pangulo, ay hindi. Sapagkat kabilang rin po sa konsiderasyon sa pagbabalangkas ng panungkalang ito, ang layunin ng Republic Act 10173 o ang Data Privacy Act of 2012 na nangangalaga po sa ating right to privacy. Nais ko na rin pong banggitin na binibigyan diin ng panukalang batas na ito ang Republic Act 9485 o ang Anti-Red Tape Act of 2007 na naglalayong mapabilis po ang serbisyo ng gobyerno. Ginoong Pangulo, hangad rin po natin magkaroon ng totoong transparency at accountability pagdating sa koleksyon at paggasta ng mga ahensya at lokal na pamahalaan ng pondo ng bayan upang makatulong sa ating laban sa lumalalang sistema ng korupsyon. Kabilang sa mga hinahangad ng panukala, malathala ang mga kontrata, bidding documents, mga lisensya at permit na iginawad sa mga pribadong kontratista. Isang napakagandang hakbangin po nito kung tunay at tapat ang ating intensyon sa tamang paggastos ng pera ng bayan. Hindi lamang nito mahadlangan ang mga modus sa pagbubulsa ng pera ng bayan. Mas mapapaigting rin po nito ang pananagutan ng mga opisyal ng pamahalaan. Ginoong Pangulo, ikinalulugod ko rin pong ibahagi na may probisyon sa ating FOI Bill patungkol sa paghikayat sa mga ahensya na gumamit po ng payak na wika sa pamamagitan ng paggamit ng wikang Pilipino sa mga impormasyong ilalabas. Alinsunod po ulit, ito ang sinasaad ng ating saligang batas na dapat magsagawa ng mga hakbangin ang pamahalaan upang ibunsod at puspusang itaguyod ang paggamit ng Pilipino bilang medium na opisyal na komunikasyon. Yaan po ay nasa Seksyon 7, Artikulo 14. Mahalagang provision po ito sapagkat nawawalan ng saysay ang access sa mga impormasyon na aking binabanggit kung hindi naman po ito lubos na maiintindihan ni Juan at ni Juana de la Cruz. Upang magkaroon naman po ng ngipin ng ating batas, naging partikular na rin po tayo sa mga administrative offenses, gayon din sa mga karampatang parusa, sa mga lalabag sa sinasaad ng ating FOI Bill. Meron din pong provision sa sistema ng incentives at rewards upang mabigyan naman natin ng tamang pagkilala ang mga ahensya o lokal na pamahalaan na nakikiisa at sumusunod po sa mga panuntunan ng Freedom of Information. Kung ito po ay may sasabatas, umaasa rin po ako na ito ay magiging tulay sa pagpapalakas ng ating komite dito po sa Senado, ang pampublikong impormasyon at mass media. Sapagkat isa po ito sa mga hamon rin na madalas nating naririnig tuwing tayo ay nagsasagawa ng pagdinig sa ating komite. Ang kawalan ng access ng taong bayan sa mga impormasyon, sa mga karapatan po nila. May kalungkutan po, hindi po madalas nalalaman ng ating mga kababayan kung ano po ang mga batas na ating naipapasa at hindi po nila alam kung ano ang kanilang mga karapatan. Ginoong Pangulo, naniniwala po ako na ang pagpapasa ng Freedom of Information Act ay hakbang sa tamang landas. Tama po ang ating iginagalang na Senadora Grace po. Ito po ay obligasyon natin sa bawat Pilipino. Napapanahon na upang tupdin natin ang ating pangako sa ating mga kababayan tungo sa tapat at mabuting pamamahala. Alam niyo po, maikwento ko lamang, ito pong committee report na ito sa akin pong magtatatlong taon dito sa Senado, ito po ang pinakamabilis. Ito po ang pinakamabilis na napunta dito sa plenaryo. Ibig sabihin lamang po na lahat tayo dito ay sumusuporta dito sa FOI. Nawa po ay sama-sama tayong tumindig para sa kalayaan sa impormasyon, hindi bilang pribilehiyo ng ilang-ilan lamang, kundi bilang bahagi ng karapatan ng bawat Pilipino. Hangad ko po na maging bahagi ito ng ating legasiya ngayong ika-19 na Kongreso. Maraming salamat po. Mabuhay po, Ginoong Pangulo.
Maraming salamat, Senador Robin Hood Padilla, punong mayorya.
Mr. President, next to deliver his co-sponsorship speech is Senator Joel Villanueva. I move that he be recognized.
Senator Joel Villanueva is recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, Majority Leader. Mr. President, esteemed colleagues, a blessed afternoon to everyone. It is such a great honor and privilege for this representation to co-sponsor Senate Bill number 2880 under Committee Report number 35368. Mr. President, at this juncture, may I be allowed to commend and congratulate our distinguished sponsor, our distinguished colleague, Senator Robin Hood Padilla, for his hard work in pushing for this very important landmark piece of legislation and for considering our bill in itself, Mr. President, Senate Bill number 933, or an act implementing the people's right to information and the constitutional policies of full public disclosure and honesty in public service, appropriating funds therefore, and for other purposes. Hindi ko na po iisa-isahin pa yung mga binanggit ng ating chairperson tungkol po dito sa panukalang batas na ito. Isa lang po ang hangarin natin, i-engage ang taong bayan para siguruhin na may transparency and accountability ang bawat opisina ng ating pamahalaan at maipakita natin sa taong bayan na sila'y kasama. Sila po ay parte ng gobyerno upang masiguro natin na napupunta sa tamang dapat pagkalagyan ang mga resources ng pamahalaan at higit sa lahat, maging epektibo ito na maging katuwang ng ating mga kababayan na maabot po nila ang kanilang mga pangarap. Mr. President, we live in a time where information is power. It influences in opinions and decisions, and it ensures that those in power are held accountable. However, Mr. President, for this power to truly benefit the people, it must be made accessible to everyone. Without the right to access to information, the Filipino people are left in the dark, exposed in the risks of misinformation, fake news, poor governance, and, of course, corruption. Ang corruption nga po, dinidefine ng Transparency International, corruption is equal to monopoly plus discretion, and then you subtract accountability. Kaya po, ang call natin for accountability and transparency must become stronger every single time, Mr. President. Globally, there is a positive trend among countries in acknowledging the importance of a dedicated arrangement within public bodies to deal with access to information. Based, in fact, Mr. President, in the 2021 report on public access to information by the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, or UNESCO, around 132 UN member states have adopted various access to information legal guarantees. Mr. President, for this reason, a Freedom of Information Act is crucial for our country. The passage of this measure will encourage accountability from our government agencies, thereby upholding democratic ideals and building public trust among our institutions. Again, Mr. President, we wish to convey our full support for this proposed legislation, which will encourage the free flow of information held by government agencies from national offices to local government units. Muli, binabati natin at pinapasalamatan ang ating kapatid, Senador Robin Hood Padilla. And with this, Mr. President, it is with great fervor that we push for the passage for this measure. Maraming salamat po at mabuhay ang bulwagang ito. Salamat.
Thank you, Senator Villanueva, Majority Leader.
Yes, Mr. President, the co-sponsorship speeches of Senator Revilla, Senator Grace Poe, Senator Lauren Legarda, they prefer to have it inserted into the records.
The sponsorship speeches of the aforementioned senators are hereby inserted into the records.
Mr. President, I move that we suspend consideration of Senate Bill number 2880.
Any objection? There being none, motion's approved. Suspend.
A minute suspension, Mr. President.
Session suspended.
Mr. President, I move to consider proposed Senate Resolution number 1223. This is the resolution honoring former Senate President Juan Ponce Enrile. So move, Mr. President.
Is there an objection? Hearing none, consideration of proposed Senate Resolution number 1223. Is it 1223 or 1228?
1223.
1223 is now in order. The Secretary will read the title of the resolution.
Resolution honoring former Senate President Juan Ponce Enrile for his untiring service and contributions to the country and the Filipino people.
Mr. President, I move for a minute suspension to allow our Senate President to sponsor the said resolution. No more. I retract the motion, Mr. President.
All right.
The Senate President is here. I move that we recognize the Senate President to sponsor the resolution.
The Senate President, Francis Chis Escudero is recognized.
Thank you, distinguished Majority Floor Leader. Thank you, Mr. Senate President. Today, we welcome back to the Senate a man whose wisdom enriched this institution in the 4 terms that he served here. Actually, for me, it can be said that he never left. For in our archives are records of his words spoken, which are not faint echoes of the past, but powerful ideas that boom loud and clear now and in the future. In our library are many laws that bear his name as author, surpassed only in number by the laws purged of mistakes and polished to perfection by a first-rate mind he deployed in the service of the Republic. And in the present company of many of us who have become better legislators because we have been subject, or rather survived, the intellectual stress test that was Juan Ponce Enrile. He can be frugal in many things, but not with advice, and many of us here are living proof of that generosity. Whether as Senate President, gaveling the approval of bills, or as an opposition leader, pounding the veneer of proposals to expose their rotten core, JPE, as we fondly refer to him, did it with equal parts of brilliance and bravery. In fact, if he were vain and designed himself a coat of arms, bravery and brilliance would be its fitting motto. And if we look back to his examined and exciting life, these traits run through like the spine of a book telling his saga. Manong Johnny's early, hard-scrabbled existence is an epic story of the unbowed spirit. As if struggling against poverty was not enough, he had to take arms against Japanese invaders while in his teens. When peace was won, he came to Manila on a guerrilla's khaki uniform, not to boast of his war service, but because those were his only decent pair of pants at that time. In less than a decade, his talent propelled him through the fast lane, from the sleepy fishing village of Gonzaga in Cagayan to law school, to Harvard, and a flourishing law career, catapulting a once social outcast into the circle of the elite. In 1966, when public service beckoned, because he was recruited by the elder Marcos, he brought his formidable intellect in the service of the people. And except for brief involuntary sabbaticals, he actually has never stopped. He actually has never stepped out of the public arena since. Never as a spectator, but always a gladiator. He is what Theodore Roosevelt called the man in the arena. He whose face is marred by dust, sweat, and blood, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat. This is a man, Mr. President, who is not only an eyewitness to the many historic events of our nation, but who actually took part and actually shaped them. And at 100, according to Ma'am Katrina, 102, late registration daw po kasi si Manong Johnny. Ewan ko kung totoo. This veteran of many battles still has a fight in him, that he is serving another tour of duty in the office of the President at 102 years old. It is a gig that dots his long career. 8 of our presidents have sought his counsel or avoided conflict with him. Si Queen Elizabeth lang siguro ang lamang sa dami ng Prime Minister na nakasalamuha. With his experience, sharp mind, and work ethic, President Marcos Jr. is lucky to have this legal heavyweight in his corner. And as Manong Johnny advanced in years, not only in looks, he is often asked what his secret to longevity is, wanting to concoct the same elixir of life. Pangarap din yan ng ating Senate President at Presiding Officer ngayon, na Senate President Pro Tem, Jinggoy Estrada. If only he had been able to discover the right formula, it would have earned him more money than the sales of our favorite Delimundo, Mr. President. In the same manner, if he had been able to monetize the memes about him, from his days in the Garden of Eve, to Samson and Delilah, to running his pet dinosaur, he will no longer be working for a paycheck, Mr. President. But let me hazard a guess to what his staying power is. In fact, it is no secret. He had frequently shared his secret to a long life, a long time ago, and it is, gusto ko, happy ka. And this is in fact in the right pursuit of happiness by every Filipino, regardless of wealth, age, creed, or religion. The right to pursue happiness without being impaired by injustice and oppression. The right to pursue happiness without being permanently crippled by social handicaps that come with birth. This is the theme that underpins all the causes and all the crusades he has fought in a life well lived. If this speech of mine were a bill, he would have introduced many amendments, I'm sure. This is because I know that he would not want to be idealized or enlarged beyond what he was in life, to borrow the lines from a famous tribute. If we call him a saint, he would be the first to vigorously oppose it, as his fidelity to truth will compel the decency in him to tone down that flattery. He does not need any, as his life is an open public record, woven into the annals of our country. But one thing is for sure, he will be kindly judged by history as the Senate is and doing today. Because in the balance sheet of life, in the ledger of what he has done, his service trumps all. Our country, Mr. President, is better off because of a Juan Ponce Enrile. And today, I salute the man, I salute his achievements, I salute the friend that I have learned to respect and love in the many years I have served, not only in this chamber, but also in the House of Representatives. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you to our distinguished colleagues.
Thank you, Senate President Escudero, Majority Leader.
Mr. President, next to deliver a co-sponsorship speech is Senator Nancy Binay.
Senator Nancy Binay is recognized. You may proceed, ma'am.
Mr. President, esteemed colleagues, at 100 years of age and having witnessed many of the various upheavals and triumphs of our relatively young republic, Juan Valentin Fruganan Ponce Enrile is the undisputed grand old man of Philippine politics. Secretary Enrile has lived through the pivotal moments of our recent history and indeed has a distinction of becoming a valuable member of every branch of government he has served for 60 years. Naglingkod siya sa pamahalaan sa iba't ibang kapasidad, kabilang ang Senate President, Minority Leader, Representative, Finance Secretary, Justice Secretary, Defense Minister, and Presidential Legal Advisor. At sa lahat ng trabahong ito, ipinamalas niya ang kanyang natatanging galing at husay. What does Secretary Enrile's long and sterling tenure in government teach us? It is that there is always a place for those of brilliant mind, impeccable work ethic, and burning desire to serve the nation and its people. As is often said, to whom much is given, much is required, and it is to our nation's benefit that Secretary Enrile has never shirked from the destiny of service that was the mandate of his prodigious talent. Kailanman ay hindi naging madamot si Manong Johnny sa pag-alay ng kanyang sarili para sa kapakanan ng bayan at ng ating mga kababayan. Hindi rin ipinagdamot ni Manong Johnny ang kanyang oras at kaalaman upang matulungan ang mga kasama niya sa trabaho upang mapabuti din ang paglilingkod nila. Kilala si Manong Johnny sa pag-aalaga ng kapakanan ng mga empleyado niya. Dito mismo sa Senado, tinutuon niya ang pangako niyang gusto ko, happy ka. Dahil naging daan siya upang mapaganda ang benepisyong natatanggap ng mga Senate staff na hindi naman maikakailang babad sa trabaho. I am proud that not only do I share roots in Cagayan Valley with Manong Johnny, but also of the fact that I have benefited from his mentorship when I entered public service. Mula noong unang pagtakbo ko sa 2013 elections at maging noong 2019, nakasama ko siya sa pag-iikot sa bansa at pangangampanya sa ating mga kababayan. Marami akong magagandang alaala at napulot na aral sa panahong magkasama kami. Secretary Enrique's guidance has helped me navigate the early years of my career. Because of him, I have been made aware of this august chamber's traditions and nuances. Indeed, he had even stood up as a second father, the protected leader of the minority into which I was thrust upon my election. A shield bearer even against the persecution that my family had experienced. Time will be the ultimate judge of Juan Ponce Enrique's place in our nation's narrative. Many will even say that JPE is not the perfect man, that he had his share of faults. But that is exactly what it means to be human. And what determines our greatness is our effort to overcome these faults to serve the greater good. I know that many of us here can attest that this man tried, he strived, he scraped and clawed, and used whatever gift he had to advance the welfare of this nation and its people. Ladies and gentlemen, I lend my wholehearted support to this resolution. It is only right that we celebrate our great men and women and thank them and aspire to emulate the good that they have done. Manong Johnny, ngayon gusto naman namin ikaw ang happy. Mabuhay po kayo.
Thank you, Senator Nancy. Majority Floor Leader.
President, next to deliver a co-sponsorship speech is Senator Joel Villanueva.
Senator Villanueva is recognized. You may proceed, sir.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Majority Leader. Mr. President, dear colleagues, before anything else, welcome back to your Senate, Manong Johnny. Naimbag nga rabi, ken Diyos ti agnina apo. I stand here today humbled by the tremendous contributions of our distinguished guests to the country and to our people. At a tender age of 100 and still serving as the Chief Presidential Legal Counsel, the immortal Juan Ponce Enrile has been untiring and unwavering in his service to the Filipino people. For almost 60 years, Mr. President, he has offered his mastery of the law and legal system, his political deftness, and his vast knowledge in his capacity as a legislator and a member of the cabinet. His long, illustrious career in politics spans 8 presidential administrations, a feat that us mere mortals can only dream to achieve in this lifetime. He served as Finance Secretary and acting chairperson of the Monetary Board, Justice Secretary, Defense Secretary, Batasang Pambansa Parliamentarian, Cagayan's District Representative at the House of Representatives, and the Senator, Senate President of this august chamber. The former Senate President served in these halls for 4 terms. He authored important measures such as the Comprehensive Tax Reform Law, and he filed the original Anti-Terrorism Bill, which became the Human Security Act. Under his leadership, the Senate passed the Comprehensive Agrarian Reform Program Extension Act, the Anti-Torture Act, and expanded Senior Citizens Act, the Anti-Child Pornography Act, the National Heritage Conservation Act, the Real Estate Investment Act, among others. Mr. President, it would take an entire Senate session to enumerate his contributions to the nation since former Senate President Enrile first joined government in 1966. His accomplishments as a legislator and his leadership as former Senate President are in equal parts admirable and overwhelmingly impressive. Many of our current and former Senate employees will always love and remember Manong Johnny because he was consistent and faithful to his favorite line na gusto ko, happy ka. And this was no mere campaign slogan, Mr. President, but a true manifestation of his commitment as a public servant who puts the welfare and interest of the public above all. Mr. President, the life and legacy of the son of Cagayan Province is the stuff of legend. And we should all consider ourselves extremely blessed to even be included as a footnote in his book. On the occasion of his 100th birthday in February this year, I happened to encounter an article listing, Mr. President, 100 things that are younger than the immortal Juan Ponce Enrile. These include television, penicillin, FM radio, canned beer, sliced bread, photocopier, the atomic bomb, Vatican City, Sputnik 1, the United Nations, Mickey Mouse, the Tidings McDuffie Law, the Philippine Commonwealth, and the list goes on, Mr. President. A century's worth of innovation, progress, and knowledge. In closing, Mr. President, please, I humbly ask that you allow me to impart one knowledge that I have learned from chapter 22 of his literal book about the best reward in life. And I quote, "To have been able to serve my country through all these decades of trials and uncertainty, and to have enjoyed the sweet and simple joys of a long and productive life is the best reward of all." Close quote. The Senate of the Philippines, the Senate of the Republic of the Philippines, gives its snappy salute to the legend that is Juan Ponce Enrile. Maraming salamat po, Senate President Enrile. Thank you, Mr. President, and may God bless us all.
Thank you, Senator Villanueva. Majority Floor Leader.
President, next to deliver a co-sponsorship speech is Senator Lauren Legarda. Move the-
Senator Legarda is recognized to deliver her co-sponsorship speech. You are recognized and you may proceed, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President, esteemed colleagues. How many people can claim to have lived over a century, not merely counting the years, but dedicating every moment to the cause of public service and shaping the very course of a nation? A century of a life lived in both the currents of history and the calm of reflection, through wars and rebuilding, crisis and triumphs, and the shifting tides of our collective story. Former Senate President Juan Ponce Enrile's service to this nation is as expansive as the archipelago we call home. As a lawyer, legislator, and statesman, he embodies the resilience of the Filipino spirit. From the intricacies of fiscal reform to the bold assertions of sovereignty, his legacy is that of an extraordinary, brilliant mind committed to the welfare of our people. In this very chamber, his leadership elevated the Senate to a space of principled and enlightened discourse. I recall with pride our shared work, among many others, on Republic Act number 10174, or the People's Survival Fund Act, a landmark piece of legislation addressing the threat of climate change, with him as the principal author when he first assumed the Senate presidency, and I as a principal sponsor during my tenure as chair of the then newly created standalone Committee on Climate Change. But before that, I had to make him watch Al Gore's documentary on An Inconvenient Truth for him to be convinced on the reality of climate change. Together, we advanced a crucial step for climate resilience, a cause we have devoted much of our lives to, ensuring that the Filipino people, especially the most vulnerable, remain at the forefront of our efforts to protect and sustain our nation's future. Yet, dear colleagues, Manong Johnny's story is far more than the sum of his accomplishments. It is a story of a man who dared to weather the storms of criticism and the tempests of change. He has shown that true strength lies not in unyielding rigidity, but the ability to stand upright again and again, no matter how fierce the gale. As we honor him today, let us be reminded that the measure of our service is not in the number of years we serve, but in the depth of our contributions. Having been in the Senate since 1998, I've seen how public service demands focus and dedication to something greater than oneself, pouring ourselves into the work, listening to the struggles of our people, connecting with their hopes, and responding to their needs with urgency and determination. Leadership, after all, is about purpose, not tenure, impact, not recognition. And this, I believe, is how we truly honor former Senate President Juan Ponce Enrile, for he is not just a man who has lived a century, he is a man who has made a century count. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Legarda. Majority Floor Leader.
President, next to deliver a co-sponsorship speech is Senator Juan Miguel Zubiri. I move that he be recognized.
Senator Zubiri is recognized. You may proceed, sir.
Mr. President, today we honor a man who has been one of the most influential leaders in the history of this institution and indeed in the history of this country. Few people have played a big hand in shaping Philippine politics and history as our Manong Johnny. Of course, more commonly or more legally known as Senate President Juan Ponce Enrile. Look at every milestone event in Philippine history since the 1960s. And Manong Johnny was likely there, in front and center, and maybe running the show from the backstage. He has led the Finance Department, the Justice Department, and the Defense Department, just to name the big ones. He has also built a legacy of landmark legislation as both congressman and senator, and he has sparked a revolution. Through it all, Manong Johnny has consistently made himself indispensable for administration after administration. His sharp insight being of highest value to every sitting president since the 60s. His stellar career in public service spans more than 5 decades, and at 100 years old, his brilliance as a politician and as a public servant unmatched. He could even probably be the oldest, I'm not sure, but we could ask Guinness Book of World Records. He could be probably the oldest living, current, serving public official in the world today. I've had the great privilege of being the majority floor leader alongside the Senate when Senator Juan Ponce Enrile was the Senate President, in my first term in the Senate during the 14th Congress. And that was a distinct honor I will never forget. This was the time when Senator Jinggoy Estrada was also my boss as the Senate President Pro Tem, and we'll toil the midnight hour passing legislation, of course, with the instructions of our Senate President Enrile. He was a great boss and even a better mentor, always generous with his time and his wisdom. We used to enjoy, I don't know if you can remember this, Senate President Jinggoy, and to those who were with me at the time, we used to enjoy his caucuses with us because we would spend hours talking about historical accounts of which he was part of. These were political events, important political events in our country's life, and he was part of them, and he was speaking firsthand from his experience. These were not stories na kwentong barbero. These were actual stories that he was part of. And he would say, and I'd love it because whenever we tell him, Boss, may gusto makipagdebate sa inyo dito sa batas na ito. Ang sasabihin palagi ni Manong Johnny, anytime, makidebate ako sa kanila dahil ako nagsulat niyan 50 years ago. 30 years ago, sabi niya, ako nag-author niyan. Ako nagsulat niyan. Ako dumepensa niyan. Wala akong problema makipagdebate sa kanila. That's how good this gentleman was. And I will always remember his kind words upon my resignation in 2011, Mr. President, when he said that it was the first time within the reach of his memory that a man, a member of this chamber, chose honor ahead of himself. That was a humbling affirmation of my decision, and I carry those words with me to this very day. Throughout his long and blessed life, Manong Johnny has cemented his legacy as a peerless public servant. And today, we are honoring him. But the truth is, my dear colleagues, that it is our honor to have worked with him and learned from him throughout these years. How I wish, Manong Johnny, you could still be with us in the Senate as a senator, because now more than ever, this institution needs all the knowledge and learned discussions that you share with us throughout your life and experience as a public servant. Kaya, Mr. President, maraming salamat po that you gave us the time to honor this great man. And maraming salamat po, Manong Johnny, for a lifetime's worth of invaluable learnings. Mabuhay po si Manong Juan Ponce Enrile. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Zubiri. Majority Floor Leader.
President, next to deliver a sponsorship speech is Senator J.B. Ejercito. I move that he be recognized.
Senator Ejercito is recognized to deliver his co-sponsorship speech. You may proceed, sir.
Mr. President, my dear colleagues, good afternoon. I rise today in this historic hall where the fate of our nation has been shaped for generations to honor one of its most illustrious sons, former Senate President Juan Ponce Enrile, whose service to our nation has witnessed the leadership of 8 of our nation's presidents. One of the proudest moments in my career and one of my fondest memories as senator is having Manong Johnny as my seatmate during the 16th Congress. Being a natural mentor himself, JP was always generous in sharing his wisdom and experience from his long industrious career in the service of our people to neophyte legislators like me. Maraming salamat po, Manong Johnny. Even in his latter years, Manong Johnny's intellect remains razor sharp and was a beacon of wisdom and eloquence in this chamber. I even remember so well that during lulls in the session, I would often observe him engage with his tablet, absorbed in a game of Bejeweled. Pero wag na kayong magiging kampante. Dahil kapag si JP, kahit naglalaro ng Bejeweled, ay tumayo. Kahit na nagpalipas siya ng oras sa paglalaro ng tablet niya, maghanda na kayo sa kanyang mga tanong. He was listening all along, absorbing every word and nuance of any ongoing debate. I still count it as one of the highest points in my career to have been part of the 16th Congress, who counted among its roster national giants whose impact and legacy will resonate far beyond these walls, shaping the very fabric of our nation. Among them, former Senate President Franklin Drilon, Miriam Defensor Santiago, and of course, Juan Ponce Enrile himself. I still vividly remember those days with JPE in the crucible of political opposition. It was a very lonely and challenging time for many of us during those times. But it was there that I was privileged to see Senator Enrile at his best, calm amidst the storm, resolute in our shared principles, and an inspiration to us all. Ginoong Pangulo, isa pong dakilang karangalan na magsilbi sa bayan, nakasama po si Juan Ponce Enrile, a true icon in Philippine politics and one of the most brilliant minds to ever walk these halls. His continuing legacy will forever be etched in the annals of our nation's history. Maraming salamat po, Manong Johnny. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Ejercito. Majority Floor Leader.
President, next to co-sponsor is Senator Mark Villar. I move that he be recognized.
Senator Mark Villar is recognized. You may proceed, sir.
Mr. President, I would like to manifest my full support for the resolution honoring one of the most distinguished members of this August chamber, former Senate President Juan Ponce Enrile. I never had the honor of sharing the plenary with our former Senate President, Juan Ponce Enrile. So it's truly an honor for me to be here today and stand here and be in the plenary with him to celebrate his career. Since he first entered public service, he has dedicated himself to ensuring that our fellow Filipinos deserve nothing but the best service our government could offer. He has been a fixture in the Philippine legislature, serving 4 terms or for more than 2 decades in the Senate and the House of Representatives. Former Senate President Enrile has witnessed the critical processes that have shaped not just the Filipino legislature, but the very laws that served as the cornerstone of Philippine democracy and the development of the socio-economic landscape we know today. Beyond the legislature, he has also been a vital component of the executive department where he held various positions of critical importance to the progress of the country. Former Senate President Enrile has manifested by his well-decorated history of public service, has played a crucial role in the significant events in our own history, making all of us here who could see him today honored to witness as the Philippine Senate pays gratitude and utmost respect to one of the men who paved the way for the realization of the Philippines our forefathers could only dream of. Mr. President, it is my pleasure to share the hallowed halls of this revered chamber with the distinguished former Senate President Juan Ponce Enrile, a feeling which I know is shared by everyone here today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Mark Villar. Majority Floor Leader.
President, next to deliver a co-sponsorship speech is none other than Senator Robin Hood Padilla. I move that he be recognized.
Senator Padilla is recognized. You may proceed, sir. Thank you.
Maraming salamat po, Ginoong Pangulo, at sa ating pong pinunong mayorya. Ako po ay nakikiisa sa pagtindig ng mga kapita-pitagang miyembro ng bulwagang ito para sa Senate Resolution Number 1223 na inihain po ng Pangulo ng Senado, Senador Chis Escudero. Ang resolusyon po na ito nagbibigay pugay sa dating Pangulo ng Senado, Juan Ponce Enrile, para sa kanyang hindi matatawarang serbisyo at kontribusyon sa bansa at buong sambayanang. Mga kapanalig, narinig ko po ang napakagandang mga karanasan at mga alaala na iginawa ng ating ginagalang Juan Ponce Enrile. Sa akin pong naratibo, ako po, nung bago po ako dito sa Senado, ang una ko pong panukala ay bigyan ng pagkilala ang mga taong lumaban sa komunista. At yan po ay isinulong ko at ito po ay nadinig din namin sa aming komite, pero hindi po ito nagkaroon ng magandang progreso. Gusto ko lamang pong ipaalala muli sa mga kabataang Pilipino na kung hindi po dahil sa pag-iisip ni Juan Ponce Enrile, maaring tayo po ay matagal nang nasa ilalim ng komunista. Siya po ay lumaban kasama ang dating Pangulo Ferdinand Marcos Sr. upang labanan po ang paglaganap ng komunismo. Yan po, nung panahon na yan, ay laganap sa Vietnam, sa Indonesia, Malaysia, hanggang ngayon po ay sa ibang bansa pa rin ng ASEAN. Kaya po, mga mahal kong kababayan, ang pagkilala po nito sa isang taong naglalakad, isang buhay na library, isang buhay na libro ng kasaysayan. Kaya't hinihingi ko po sa ating mga kabataan na huwag niyo pong sayangin ang pagkakataon, kayo po ay makinig, magbasa, at sa mga sinasabi po ng ating ginagalang na Sir Juan Ponce Enrile, sapagkat siya po ay man of wisdom. Ang kanyang pong karanasan sa politika ay marami po tayong matututunan. Makinig po tayo sa kanya. Yun lamang po, sa interes po ng oras ay hindi ko na po hahabaan pa ang aking talumpati. Sapat na po ang ating pagtindig upang magbigay pugay sa tunay na alamat at kayamanan ng ating bansa. Mabuhay po kayo, Sir Juan Ponce Enrile. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you, Senator Padilla. Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. President, next to deliver a co-sponsorship speech is none other than Senator Bong Revilla. I move that he be recognized.
Senator Revilla is recognized to deliver his co-sponsorship speech. You are recognized, sir, and you may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, we join this body in honoring former Senate President Juan Ponce Enrile in the role he has played in shaping our country. Kasaysayan po ang saksi sa alamat na si JPE. The lines across his face tell the stories he has witnessed and taken part in. Tila nga po parang puno na kung hihimayin ng bawat linya ay maisasalaysay kung paano sa maraming pagkakataon mula sa kanyang paninindigan ay sumibol ang mga binhi na siya namang tinatamasa pa rin mapasa hanggang ngayon. Sa loob ng 100 taon, habang pinapanday ng tadhana ang kanyang pagkatao, inuukit naman niya ang kanyang mga kontribusyon sa ating lipunan. Kinikilala at pinapasalamatan natin lahat ng naiambag niya sa ating sintang bayan. His sharp mind and astute character as part and parcel of his stellar journey. 100 years on, and the gift that this legend is just keeps on giving. Walang maliw, walang sawa sa paninilbihan sa bayan. Mapalad po ang nooy isang baguhang senador na si Bong Revilla na makatrabaho ang isang JPE. Isang tao na dekada na ang napatunayan sa larangan ng paglilingkod bayan mula 13th Congress hanggang 16th Congress. Magkasama kami ni Manong Johnny at talagang masasabi kong kada araw na lumipas sa aming mga session noon, may bago at bago kang matututunan. I am one of the honored few to be able to call him my Senate President. The lessons he imparted to me form a great part of this kind of public service I am today. I am proud to consider myself his student, for I have learned many things from him in serving this great country. JPE, Manong Johnny, you are as legendary as your brilliant mind. The lesson of your life will always be etched in our nation's history. Manong Johnny, maraming salamat po. Mabuhay ka.
Thank you, Senator Revilla. Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. President, last to deliver a co-sponsorship speech is Senator Jingoy Estrada.
Our Senate President Pro Tem, Jingoy Estrada, is recognized to deliver his co-sponsorship remarks. You may proceed, sir.
My dear colleagues, today we gather to honor a man whose name is permanently etched in the history of the Philippines. Someone whose wisdom, resilience, and contributions to our nation have established him as a monumental figure in public service. It is with great pride and deep gratitude that I stand before you to celebrate the legacy of my mentor, a statesman par excellence, the one and only Juan Ponce Enrile. His storied career, spanning over half a century, is a testament to his unparalleled dedication to the Filipino people. His widely recognized initials, JPE, stands for more than just a name. To me, they signify three defining qualities. J, as in judicious lawmaking, P, as in professional excellence, and E, as in enduring legacy. My father, former President Joseph Estrada, once said, Juan Ponce Enrile is a tough act to follow, and he truly is. Few can match his extensive experience, sharp intellect, and significant contributions to our nation. His remarkable career in public service over the past 50 years showcases his courage, wisdom, and dedication to the Filipino people. During our time together in this August chamber, I was the Senate President pro temp during his tenure as Senate President from 2008 until 2013. I have personally witnessed his tireless work ethic and his sharp legal mind at play. Whether debating on the floor, crafting laws, or leading in times of crisis, his presence has always been a source of strength and inspiration. Hindi rin po matatawaran ang ipinamalas na pamumuno ni Manong Johnny sa impeachment trial ni dating Chief Justice Renato Corona. In Senate Resolution Number 18, based on a privileged speech that I delivered in this August chamber in May 30, 2012, we commended his resolute, diligent, impartial, and just leadership as presiding officer of the Senate, sitting as an impeachment court in the matter of the impeachment trial of the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. Sabi nga ng aking ama, Chief Justice Corona is very fortunate than me because the presiding officer, Senate President Juan Ponce Enrile, is very impartial. Hindi naging madamot si Manong Johnny sa pagbibigay payo at paggabay, lalo na sa mga neophytes na kagaya ko nung unang termino ko dito sa Senado. Siya ang naging pamantayan ko sa pagiging mambabatas. He was not just my mentor. He was a father figure in many ways, imparting lessons in governance and life. He taught me the importance of staying true to one's principles, standing firm even in the face of adversity, and always putting the nation's welfare above all else. His advice often resonates with me, especially during challenging times. One of his most memorable lessons was about the importance of courage in leadership. He once told me, Jinggoy, public service is not for the faint of heart. Matuto ka na maging matibay sa gitna ng mga kritisismo. Magsakripisyo kung kinakailangan at manindigan para sa tama gaano man kahirap. Today, Mr. President, as we honor former Senate President Juan Ponce Enrile, we celebrate more than his accomplishments. We celebrate his enduring legacy. He is a reminder to all of us in public service of what it truly means to lead with integrity, wisdom, and unrelenting dedication to our people. Manong Johnny is not just a legislator. He is an institution. To Manong Johnny, as many of us fondly refer to him, thank you for being a mentor and an inspiration. We appreciate your sacrifices and lifelong dedication to the Filipino people. You have established a standard of public service that is a tough act to follow, but one we will strive to emulate. Manong Johnny, mabuhay ka at gusto ko po happy ka. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senate President Pro Tem Estrada. Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. President, the following members of this chamber would want to have their co-sponsorship speeches be inserted into the records, Mr. President, to wit, Senator Grace Poe, Senator Sherwin Gatchalian, Senator Bongo, Senator Ronald De La Rosa, including this representation, Mr. President.
Noted and inserted into the records.
Mr. President, no other member wishes to interpolate or propose amendments to the measure. I move to adopt proposed Senate Resolution number 1223.
Is there any
Subject to
objection?
style. So move, Mr. President.
Is there any objection? Hearing none, motion is approved. Therefore, stated resolution is deemed adopted.
Mr.
Majority
President,
Floor Leader.
with the consent of the body, I move that we suspend our rules to recognize the Chief Presidential Legal Counsel and distinguished former Senate President Juan Ponce Enrile for his response. I so move, Mr. President.
With the permission of the body, Chair would like to recognize the Honorable Juan Ponce Enrile, former Senate President and current Chief Presidential Legal Counsel, to deliver his response. You have the floor, sir, and you may proceed.
Okay na ba? Thank you, Mr. President. I'm really overwhelmed by this event. I never expected that I will come back to this chamber in a wheelchair. But that is the problem of all of us. We all suffer from the same disease, you and I, and that disease is time. It comes sooner or later. Now it is my time. But nonetheless, I appreciate, Mr. President, this unusual and unique gesture that you have accorded me this evening to recognize my humble contribution, not only to this chamber, but to the country. And I must tell you that if there is anything else that I will cherish much in my life, it will be this. And I would like to thank you, Mr. President Chis Escudero, and all those who spoke here, as well as those who did not. Beginning with Nancy, Joel, Lauren, Migs, JV, Mark, Robin, Bong, and Jinggoy. Thank you very much for the very kind words that you have extended to me. To be in this chamber is not something that can be taken for granted. It is an honor, a privilege, and a very heavy responsibility. You represent the people, you represent the country, you balance the lower house, you're another chamber, your president is number 3 in the hierarchy of succession, and that is why I would like to commend you and congratulate you for being here. Thank you very much for this honor. You know, since I left this Senate in 2016, I thought it was the end of my political career. And the question that came to my mind at that time was, what am I going to do now? So finally, I decided to study the country, study the planet, study everything that matters to any people on this planet, for them to exist, persist, and survive. And that is why today I would like to let you know that if there's anything I can do for you, for each and every one of you, just call me and I will give you my 2 cents advice. You are now in charge of this country, and this country must be handled by every generation of Filipinos. No one, no president, no senator, no member of the House can singly develop this country. It must be developed by the collective effort of every Filipino and every generation. It is the only country that we have, and we happen to be here. We cannot change our geography. We have to deal with our present environment. One thing I can tell you, your young people, I've worked with you, I've worked with your parents, but you are living at a time perhaps much more difficult and much more challenging than the time I have lived with. I went to war during the war. I participated in the drama that we have had in this chamber. I've been jailed several times, but I survived, and that's why I'm here today. That is the essence of our struggle to make this country exist. Not for ourselves, not for anyone, but for our families and our descendants. And so today, thank you for granting me this honor. Thank you for giving me this resolution. Perhaps this will be the last honor that I will receive, but nonetheless, from the bottom of my heart, I'm grateful and thank you very much.
Karangalan po namin, Manong Johnny, at maraming salamat. Session is suspended.
Mr. President, I move that the rules be reinstated.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Mr. President, I move that some administrative matters, Mr. President, I move that we transfer the primary committee referral of proposed Senate Resolution number 1239, resolution directing the appropriate Senate committee to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation to determine the effects of the government's tax collection of the tax leakages caused by the proliferation and unscrupulous use of fake persons with disability identification cards in order to avail of the 20% PWD discount and value-added tax exemption from the Committee on Social Justice, Welfare and Rural Development to the Committee on Ways and Means, and to make instead a secondary referral thereof to the Committee on Social Justice, Welfare and Rural Development. So move, Mr. President.
Is there any objection? There being none, the motion is approved.
Mr. President, I move that we proceed to the Senate President's designation of the Senate conferees to the Conference Committee on the Disagreeing Votes of House Bill number 10800. This is the bill on the General Appropriations Act of 2025. I so move, Mr. President.
The following members are hereby designated as Senate conferees to the Conference Committee on the Disagreeing Votes of House Bill number 10800. They are, number one, the chairpersons of the Finance Committee, Senator Grace Poe, as chairperson of the Senate panel. Number two, Senator Cynthia A. Villar. Number three, Senator Ronald Bato de la Rosa. Number four, Senator Pia S. Cayetano. Number five, Senator Sherwin Gatchalian. Number six, Senator Christopher Lawrence Bongo. Number seven, Senator Lauren Ligarda. Number eight, Senator Risa Hontiveros. Number nine, Senator Amy R. Marcos. Number 10, Senator Joel Villanueva. Number 11, Senator Juan Miguel Mig Subiri. Number 12, Senate Majority Leader Francis Tol Tolentino. Number 13, Senator Mark A. Villar. Number 14, Senator Joseph Victor J.V. Ejercito. Number 15, this representation. Number 16, Senate Minority Leader Aquilino Coco Pimentel III. And number 17, Senate President Francis Cheese Escudero. So designated.
Mr. President, I move that we adjourn the session until 3 o'clock in the afternoon of Wednesday, November 27, 2024.
Is there an objection? There being none, Senate The session is adjourned until tomorrow, Wednesday, 3 o'clock, November 27, 2024.